She entered the night as a fragile princess, a pawn in a game of power she never asked to play. Her life, once a delicate tapestry woven with dreams and quiet moments in the royal gardens, was about to be torn asunder. The treaty had been signed, the alliances forged, and her hand was the price. She was to be married to a man whose name was spoken only in hushed, fearful tones, a prince from a neighboring kingdom known for his cruelty and insatiable ambition. His reputation preceded him like a storm cloud, a shadow that stretched across the land, chilling the hearts of all who heard it. They called him the Wolf Prince, a man with eyes as cold as the winter frost and a heart rumored to be carved from stone. For him, this marriage was not a union of hearts, but a strategic acquisition, a way to solidify his claim and expand his dominion. The princess, whose spirit was as gentle as a doe's, was to be tethered to this predator. The palace, once a place of warmth and familiarity, became a gilded cage. Every corridor seemed to echo with the whispers of her impending doom. The servants, who had watched her grow from a wide-eyed child into a graceful young woman, now looked upon her with expressions of profound pity. They saw the terror that haunted her eyes, the tremor in her hands as she was fitted for her wedding gown. On the eve of her wedding, as the final preparations were made and the castle buzzed with a nervous energy, the princess made a desperate plea. She begged her father, the king, to delay the wedding night, to grant her just one more day of reprieve. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The political gears were already in motion, and her personal fears were deemed insignificant in the grand calculus of power. The servants whispered among themselves, sharing fragments of the heartbreaking scene they had witnessed. The princess on her knees, tears streaming down her face, her voice a fragile thread of desperation, begging for a mercy that would not be granted. She was led to the bridal chamber, a lamb to the slaughter. The heavy oak door closing behind her with a sound of finality that sealed her fate. The night descended upon the castle, a heavy, suffocating blanket of silence. The revelry had died down. The guests had retired, and an uneasy calm settled over the stone walls. But this was not a peaceful silence. It was the tense, watchful quiet before a storm. Hours before the first light of dawn was scheduled to break over the horizon, a single, horrifying sound shattered the stillness. It was a scream not of passion, but of pure, unadulterated terror. The sound was sharp, piercing, and then abruptly cut off, leaving an even more profound and chilling silence in its wake. It was a sound so dreadful that it jolted guards from their posts and sent servants stumbling from their beds, their hearts pounding in their chests. They looked at each other with wide, frightened eyes, a shared, unspoken question hanging in the air. But no one dared to move. No one dared to investigate. The groom was a man you did not cross, a man whose wrath was legendary. They were paralyzed by fear, waiting, listening, as the night held its breath. When the morning sun finally cast its pale, weak light through the castle windows, a chambermaid was sent to attend to the new bride. She knocked, her knuckles rapping softly against the unyielding wood. There was no answer. She called out the princess's name, her voice trembling. Still, only silence. With a growing sense of dread, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The scene that greeted her would be forever seared into her memory. The princess lay on the opulent bed, her wedding silks disheveled and stained. Her body was still, her skin unnaturally pale, but it was the marks on her that defied all explanation. They were not the marks of a struggle, nor the brutal evidence of a common murderer's blade. They were strange, intricate patterns, almost like a dark calligraphy, etched into her skin. They were symbols no one in the court had ever seen. patterns that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Even in death, the Wolf Prince was nowhere to be found. He had vanished as mysteriously as the marks had appeared, leaving behind only the cold, silent body of his bride and a room thick with an aura of ancient, unspeakable evil. The kingdom was plunged into a state of shock and mourning. The people had loved their gentle princess, and the news of her horrific death spread like wildfire, fueling whispers of dark magic and demonic pacts. But just as the grief and outrage began to swell, a royal decree was issued. The king, his face a mask of grim, unreadable emotion, ordered absolute silence. The princess's death was not to be spoken of. There would be no official investigation, no public mourning period. The court physicians who had examined the body were sworn to secrecy under penalty of death. The official story, circulated in a terse, dismissive announcement, was that the princess had succumbed to a sudden, tragic illness. It was a lie so blatant, so transparent, that it served only to deepen the fear and suspicion that now gripped the kingdom. It was clear that the king was hiding something, terrified of a truth far more monstrous than the murder of his own daughter. The alliance, for which she had been sacrificed, was now a fragile, poisoned thing, held together by a shared, unspoken horror. Her existence was systematically erased. Portraits were removed from the palace walls, official records were altered, and her name was struck from the royal lineage. It was as if she had never been born. The princess who was meant to secure a dynasty became a ghost, a void in the nation's history. But you cannot completely erase a memory that is steeped in blood and sorrow. While the official scribes and historians complied with the king's command, her story survived in the shadows. It was kept alive in forbidden poems, passed down in hushed tones from one generation to the next. The common folk, the poets, the mothers who told bedtime stories to their children, they became the secret keepers of her memory. They wrote of the gentle princess with starlight in her eyes, sacrificed to a wolf in prince's clothing. They wrote of the scream that tore through the dawn and the unspeakable marks that were her final testament. She was no longer just a princess. She became a cautionary tale, a symbol of innocence destroyed by ambition. Her death, erased from the annals of kings, was instead written into the soul of the people. She left this world not as a bride, but as a warning, a chilling prophecy carved in royal blood.